Hello everyone, and welcome to Open Source Friday. Hope you're all doing absolutely amazing today. Welcome in to all our Australian, New Zealand viewers. It is Friday afternoon for all you lovely people, and for everyone else over on the US, it is getting to late Thursday night, I think. Thank you all for tuning in, and welcome all. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Now, we're super excited on Open Source Friday on the GitHub Twitch channel today to have a very amazing, awesome guest with us. Again, tuning to us from the evening time zone as well. So we thank him so much for staying up late to join us all, because that's what we are all about on Open Source and being part of the community, is just getting up and staying awake for all our amazing community people. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you all to Tanner Linsley from React Query. How you going, Tanner?
Hi there. Doing
How's
great.
everything been going today? Oops, sorry, we lost you for a
It's
second
it's
there.
been great. Had a good day. Just winding down here at the house. It's 9 p.m. here, so but
well,
it's been good.
well, we definitely thank you for staying awake late at night and being on board for our Open Source Friday stream. So, how have you been going with React Query? What's been happening on that front? And maybe for all those viewers who don't know, before we jump into all the ins and outs of getting involved in the open source community, how about we have a little chat first about what React Query is for those people who have absolutely no idea?
Sure. So React Query is going great. React Query is a library that I launched about a year ago. In fact, I think it just turned 1 year old
Ooh,
about
party
like a
time!
week. Yeah, like a week ago. Woo.
Party during COVID, right?
Yeah, and it's been going awesome. So it has like 14,000 stars and almost 200 contributors now. But React Query is a library for fetching data in React, simply put. Um, I've been told by a lot of people that it's kind of like the missing data fetching library for React. But it does a lot more than that. But that's a good place to start.
I like it. Now, if we go and jump over and have a look at your GitHub profile, you definitely weren't telling lies, because if you look up the top there, 14.3 thousand stars. Well done on that. So that is amazing. And if we scroll down here and look at the number of contributors, 190 contributors and used by over 2,500 people. So very, very awesome and great work on that. Now, you talked a little bit about like React Query and like what it actually is, and you only started a year ago, so that was pretty cool. And to have like your 1 year anniversary or birthday this time is really, really awesome. So, why did you start React Query?
React Query, I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to build React Query. But it's been a long time coming. Honestly, I would say ever since I migrated to React from Angular like 4 years ago. Um, I just, I've always wanted something like React Query in React. And my entire journey of going through the React ecosystem and getting into open source has kind of led up to React Query itself. Getting really deep into Redux, building kind of Redux wrappers that maybe weren't super popular at the time, and now they are. Building other libraries that maybe aren't as popular, but helped me practice my open source foo, like React Table. But at the end of the day, like a lot of things led up to React Query. React Hooks was a huge one. Anybody who has used React Query knows that it's hooks only. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, like everything about fetching data in React just never felt right until I built React Query. So a lot of those pieces came together over the years until everything kind of just aligned perfectly to release the library.
Nice. And if we jump across again, have a quick look at your the website, all the things you're saying, React hooks and things like that. Now I'm curious, this Tan Stack newsletter, is that because of Tanner? Is that why it's called Tan Stack?
Yeah, and that started out as a joke from one of my friends on Twitter, and he's like, "Oh, it's so funny. You should call it the Tan Stack." And I kind of chuckled at first, like, "Oh, that would be interesting." And he kept saying it over and over on Twitter and even made a hashtag for it. And other people started jumping on board. And I was like, okay, you know, it kind of doesn't sound half bad now. So let's do it.
There we go. So you can actually subscribe to the future home of 10 Stack. I think it's, yeah, great. Every time I read this, I'm like, Gem Stack or 10 Stack? Well, like, what other
Yeah.
kind of stack is it? I quite like it. So, yeah, as you mentioned, you had a brief chat to me before you jumped on this, saying you even have a Discord server for 10 Stack. And that's what you're going to be, I suppose that's where a lot of your community live, right?
Yep. There's almost 1,500 of us there. And honestly, it's a super tight knit and very inviting community of people who just want to build better applications, and they find my tools useful, and everybody kind of converges there to help each other out. So
We've had a chat to a few of the other maintainers on Open Source Friday now. So a lot of them seem to have Discord servers, which I think is an amazing thing, right? You know, when you talk about trying to find communities, a lot of maintainers and contributors say a great way to find communities through Discord servers. So what are the types of things that you do over on your server? You talked about people like supporting one another, but what are the kind of conversations that go on? Like, what are the kind of things that happen there? Is there any cool like examples of like, I don't know, really cool clubs or something that's come out of having your Discord server and having a community on there?
yeah, absolutely. There's a huge range of conversations that go on that server, everywhere from people who just got into React and they're just kind of learning the basics and they're looking for help, all the way to like very in-depth discussions about the internals of the libraries that I write. I even have private channels there for all of the contributors of all my libraries so that they can plan together and discuss internals and ideas without, you know, causing a riot in the normal channels. There's a channel for each library there so that people can discuss specific issues. And yeah, like it's really just kind of all over the place. Another fun one too is we have some new stuff coming out for React Query next year
Ooh.
that yeah, we're kind of, it's not really a secret, but you know, we're keeping it kind of down low for now. But it's we're trying to make React Query platform agnostic, so you could use it with any other framework, Angular, Svelte, whatever you want. And I have met some of the coolest contributors who are so passionate about these projects and React Query that they are helping me write these new bindings for it. And they all have their own channels to kind of work together, and anybody can become a contributor, and I put you into the channel and you can help contribute to these new libraries. It's very cool just to see the amount of collaboration that happens inside of there.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I'm really interested in these Discord. So I'm a gamer, so we obviously have a lot of Discord servers for gaming as well. And I think the more and more I chat to maintainers, the more I find that they're all using these servers for these kind of things. I just want to give a shout out to Ice Cream Tango in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to everyone else in the chat as well. Don't forget that we are taking questions from the chat. So if there's something you want to know about open source, about React Query specifically, about anything, just pop it in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to ask. Now, I do want to keep on this Discord server thing for a little bit longer. We've had some questions in previous weeks, but also people have seemed to be quite interested in how do you actually build that community on Discord. So you said you have, what, 1,500 people on Discord? So how do you go about building up that community and building a cadence around getting on the Discord server, interacting with one another, and yeah, how do you go about that?
Yeah, I didn't find it too challenging, to be honest. The first thing I did was just create the server and give it some good branding, you know, make sure that the logo's on there and that it feels legit. And then I just took that, I made an invite and put that invite link on all of my repos, everywhere I have it. I made that landing page for my for the 10 stack, and I put that link there too. Basically, anywhere that I have that's public, I just made sure that people can, you know, go here if you want to be a part of the community, you know. And in the beginning, I had to be the community myself. I had to be very, very involved with discussing every single question and every single topic. So it is very involved in the beginning if you want to kind of jumpstart it. And as more people join and the conversations start to flow better, and also as certain people start to come out as kind of ringleaders inside of the community, you know, people who are moderating for you and answering questions on your behalf, and you know, kind of the cheerleaders of the project itself. Those people start to emerge, and they make it easier then to kind of step back a little bit and just kind of, you know, lead people and manage there, and not have to be uber involved, and just kind of jump in, you know, when there needs to be either moderation or when you need to announce something new.
So you kind of like kickstart the community, and then the community gets big enough that it can kind of run itself, I suppose, like any other community. I think the big question we've been having, though, is how do you actually jumpstart that? And I think you've answered it perfectly. You know, just basically everywhere where your community currently is, just go put your Discord on everything. So if we have a brief look at a couple of your websites, you've got, you know, join the Discord here. There's probably it somewhere here as well on the homepage, like join Discord. And do you have it? Let's have a look. Is it on the repo as well? It's probably in the README file, right?
I think there is like a Discord badge somewhere. Maybe not.
There's a lot of things usually up here.
Yeah.
I usually notice a Discord badge somewhere up the top here, or
also inside of the issue templates in GitHub.
Ooh, that's exciting.
I believe if you go to create a new issue, you're going to see a template that says, you know, what do you want? Is it a feature request? Is it community chat? So that feature requests and questions, that will take you to the discussions section of the repo.
That's awesome. So you've got discussions enabled, which is good. We can talk about this next.
Yeah, and put a pin in that one. Yep. And the other link will actually take you to the Discord server itself. So if you click on the
hence why it says open.
Chat.
So you've set these up. This is perfect. There you go. Go straight to Discord, and then you can join the Discord server.
There you go.
That is really, really cool. Now, I've got a question from the chat, and then we're going to come back to the discussions, because I love talking about discussions, and I definitely want to get some of your thoughts on it. I've got a question in the chat saying that if you are new to open source, how do you go about actually starting to promote the libraries you're developing without like an existing presence? We've had, I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'll give you some thoughts about what our guest last week spoke about from Hopscotch. He had some very interesting insights on how to go about promoting yourself. But for you, Tanner, what are your thoughts on how do you get out there and promote yourself without having an existing community already?
That's a tough question, but I think the way that I have approached that is it doesn't matter in the beginning. It doesn't matter how much marketing you do or how much presence you have for a library to some extent, unless the library is actually good. So I think at the bare minimum, you need to make sure that you have a library that works, that has documentation, and is actually solving a problem either in a way that is different or better than the tools that you're trying to compete against. You know, having an open source library it's not about having the library, it's about solving a problem. And knowing your problem space, like the back of your hand, is going to help you navigate that environment. And the better that you can know that problem space and know your competitors, the better you're going to be able to market your library. Mm-hmm. So the way that I started was just finding the problem space that wasn't being addressed by the existing tools in the ecosystem. I built a library that was geared towards that specific problem, solving it in the way that I thought was best. And from there, it does help to have an existing presence on the internet, but you don't need a presence to go to Stack Overflow questions or to get on Reddit, or, you know, really to go to the community portions of the internet and just kind of put yourself out there. You just have to say, hey, you know, here's a library I made, and if you're having this type of an issue, it will probably help you. And also making yourself personally available in the beginning, just like the Discord server. You have to be there for the very first users of your library. making yourself available and putting in the time and the labor that it's going to take to get the proper feedback to make your library better.
Definitely. I think, so we had Lyris from Hopscotch on last week, and he was saying very, very similar things to you, which is, find where your audience is, go and promote. And he was saying too, like, go and like shamelessly self-promote everywhere. Jump on places like, start building your Twitter following, jump on Discord servers, start like get on the Reddit subreddits and things like that. And if you do want to read a little bit about that from last week, here is the Dev2 post that I put together. And one of the things he says is, just basically just get out there and promote. Like, you need to find your audience and find out where they are. Now, before we jump into discussions, I had a couple of questions about GitHub dark mode, which I get quite a lot on this stream. Light mode does burn my eyes too, but if you want dark mode, we don't have an official GitHub dark mode for anyone out there at the moment. But what we do have, again, another amazing open source project is what you call Dark Reader. So Dark Reader allows you to make your browser dark, and it goes across everything. So obviously this is why you're seeing my GitHub in a dark mode. If I go to any other website as well, this is probably why yours looks a bit funky, because we've got Dark Reader on. So I'm going to turn it off, it goes white, and then turn it back on, it goes dark again. Dark Reader, again, another open source project, but we have been getting a lot of feedback about dark mode for GitHub, so you never know. And if you ever do want to know about what's happening with GitHub, you can always go check out our public roadmap. So we released the public roadmap only like a couple months ago, not like literally not that long ago. And you can go jump on our public roadmap and see all the things that are coming up. So go check it out. But discussions, Tanner, I want to chat a bit about this. How are you finding discussions, and what do you actually, you kind of touched on it a little bit before, but so for those of you who don't know, we launched GitHub discussions at Satellite this year, back in May. Gee, it's been that long. And it's a way for people to have good discussions within their repos. So I want to hear from you how you are finding discussions, but also what are the kinds of things you're using discussions for within the React Query repo.
So I was lucky enough to be one of the earliest beta testers of discussions on React Table, and I got to add it to React Query very quickly after that. And I was able to give a lot of hopefully good feedback to the team on how to make it better. It has been a massive game changer for issue triaging. Personally, I really do not like GitHub issues for anything other than issues. And if you kind of take an issue coming in on your library and say, where does this issue need to go? This was kind of a missing piece, because if it was like a really quick question, or like a question that maybe was asking for something like the community help, that's something where now Discord can fill that gap. If it was a real issue, then it makes sense to have it be in the issues, right? And tag it up and try and fix it. But there are so many there's so many issues that used to come in and still do to some extent that are just kind of, how do I do this? How do I do that? Hey, I'm seeing this thing and it looks kind of weird. I don't have all the information to really make it an issue, but I'm just curious about what's going on. So it's kind of these vague things that come in through issues. I didn't like what we did before is we kind of just be like, if you don't have a reproduction use case, I'm going to close your issue. But now instead of doing that, I get to kind of just say, okay, we're going to move this over to discussions. It can go into ideas or Q&A or just kind of general discussion, and it's still visible to the internet. It gets indexed for SEO. People, see those questions coming in if they're watching the repo. But it doesn't necessarily get tracked as an issue, and it doesn't like put a big old number, above your issue count saying, this repo has, 600 issues. Well, it turns out that only, 100 of those are actually issues. 500 of them are questions that the contributors and maintainers have failed to close or triage. So I think it's been solving that problem, at least for me.
Thank you for that. And we've got some React Query love in the chat. We've got Soulless Shoe loves React Query. Lich, yeah, for various reasons we've disabled link sharing. So feel free to post your comment again, and I'll post the link for you because it is a Twitch link, a GitHub link, so I've posted the link there for you again. Lich, feel free to write your comments again. We've disabled link sharing. Again, Tanner, thank you so much for that. I love hearing that kind of culture around discussions, because that's one of the main reasons why we built discussions, is for the exact reasons that you're talking about, which is, you notice things are happening in an issue where originally issues were designed to open an issue because there's an issue, like there's a thing that needs to be fixed or a feature that needs to be implemented, rather than something that just needs to be discussed. So we're super happy that discussions are being used for that, and I think you've called it out too, is that feature to be able to change something or convert an issue to a discussion, vice versa. So if you're having a discussion about something really in depth, and you go, okay, no, we have now decided that we want this to be a feature, you can go bang, convert to an issue and build that into a feature. So that's really cool that you're using it in that way.
Yeah, it's been a game changer. I'm glad I have it. I enabled it on all of my repos as fast as possible. So.
He's like, hit that button, enable discussions across everything. I really, really like it. Just double checking if we've got any other questions. Keep those questions coming through the chat. We'd love to hear from you all. Now, so what I want to talk about next is React Query as an open source project. Now, obviously, it's an open source project, and as we showed before, we got 190 contributors, almost 200 contributors. If I was a new person coming to React Query for the first time, wanting to contribute, what would I do? Walk me through your process of getting someone to contribute to your project and onboarding them in the right manner.
Okay, well, I think this goes for most projects, but the easiest way to contribute to a project is to look at the issues. So for really any GitHub project, most GitHub projects, you can go into the issues tab, and there's going to be a label that is either labeled first time contributor or easy pick or something like that.
Do you have good first issues?
Good first issue, yep. And
none at the moment, but
unfortunately we don't have any at the moment. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that there isn't going to be one in the future. But
there's a couple of closed one. We'll close one there.
Yep. As maintainers and contributors to a library, it's important for us to, when we find an issue that could be solved easily, but is not necessarily a massive issue, those are the things that we mark as good first issue. It's good for a first time contributor. And from there, it's kind of like if you find one of those and you want to work on it, the next thing you need to do is go read the contributing documentation inside of the repo. So most repos have a contributing doc right inside. It's all caps. Yep. And everything inside of here is supposed to tell you how you're supposed to help us work on this repo. There might be some suggestions in here on what we consider issues or features or how to discuss them. And you can actually see that right there, it says issues are identified as implementation questions, or non-issues are immediately closed or redirected to GitHub discussions. So kind of teaching you how to triage issues as well, which is something that is extremely helpful. I don't think newcomers understand that contributing to open source doesn't always mean writing code. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be that you write code and submit a PR. Some of the best contributions I've had are from people who just kind of watch the issues and the discussions, and they'll use those discussions that crop up that are just kind of like, hey, how do I do this? But, or how does this work? And it gives you an opportunity as a first-time contributor to learn something about the library and then go and answer that question. And that doesn't require you to really write any code at all. It's a great way to get involved and to start understanding the library. And then once you do have the level of understanding that you need, and also by helping triage issues like that, it's really nice for maintainers to see that. So if you ever want to get on a maintainer's good side, go into the issues of the discussions and try and help answer questions and get more information in triage. We love that. And then when it finally comes time that you want to submit some code, even if it's something as simple as fixing some typos in the documentation, the rest of this documentation here in the contributing doc is going to help you get up and running. It should have instructions on there on how to kind of spin up the repo to clone it and how to run tests, right? Yep, there's the one-click setup right there. and all the instructions you need to commit your code to the repo. So this is pretty standard, or it should be across any GitHub repo that you come to.
This is a pretty good contributing document. So you're saying like you want people to come in, you want them to read the contribution guidelines, and you want them to kind of be part of the community a little bit too. Like, sitting back and having a look at discussions and looking at the issues and just being a little bit involved. We've got some people in the chat, like obviously Glenn there, saying, yes, non-code submissions can be just as useful as code submissions. Exhibit A, yes, the docs. And I just noticed too when we're going through the issues that one of your issues is tagged with documentation. Which is, go and fix some documentation there, probably write something new or go and do some bug fixes. There you go, remove these, do these, write some things. And we've also got Brian saying improving docs and examples are some of the most helpful and high impact ways to contribute, which I think is amazing. And on that...
Hi, Brian.
Brian, Mitch, L, proving code examples. Yeah, I just think that's really cool. And I've seen like so many people come in and do, as you mentioned, like spelling errors, fixing headings. I think the examples one is a good one. I noticed throughout Hacktoberfest even, a lot of the open source projects that are opted in for Hacktoberfest are actually asking people to provide examples and more examples of certain things. So, provide an example of this code working in X, Y, and Z. And I think that's just, like those types of documentation I think is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And
speaking of examples, I really have enjoyed the example architecture for React Query. Our examples it's just a directory of folders that are code sandbox projects. So and you can use the link that Code Sandbox gives you to automatically import from GitHub. So the Code Sandbox sources of truth are in the repo in this directory. And so if you ever want to add a new example or improve it, you just do it on Code Sandbox, and then you can just push up the entire folder. It's really fun, and it's so good to have more examples and lots of examples for your library, because it helps people also submit better issues for your project. They say, I'm having an issue with the infinite scrolling API on React Query. I'll say, well, perfect. There's a Code Sandbox for infinite scrolling right here. How about you just fork it and kind of make the bug happen and then send it to me? Oh, it's perfect. Code Sandbox is another tool that has just revolutionized open source for me.
I'm going to grab that link, Code Sandbox, and I'll pop in the chat for those people. We've also got a few people echoing your sentiments about Code Sandbox, saying it's incredible, it's amazing. And we've got some people there in the chat, looks like they've been either contributing to docs themselves or at least contributing to some open source. So the next thing I want to talk about really briefly before I jump into a little bit more about how you got into coding, is you've just spoken about what you want first-time contributors to do when they come to your repo. You want them to read the documentation, to read the contribution guidelines, check out what issues are already there, then be part of the discussions to understand how the community works. Now, what are your top tips for people who maybe want to contribute to React Query but not sure about how to go about it, or even people who just want to contribute to open source in the first place? What are your tips to those people who are kind of sitting there going, should I be doing this, should I not? Is it good, is it bad?
Well, I think one important thing to remember about contributing to open source is if you're not using open source, then it's going to make it harder for you to contribute to it. If you want to contribute to a library, you need to start using it. And this also goes along with that saying that you need to dog food your own stuff. That's why I always ask myself when I start a new project, uh, am I going to use this project myself in my own, side projects or company or businesses? Am I going to use this long term? And if the answer is yes, then I'm confident that I'm going to be able to dog food my own library. And that's what makes you a good contributor, I think, is knowing how to use it in the real world, knowing its limitations and maybe where it could become better, right? If you don't have any of that experience using a tool, you're not necessarily going to know how to fix the tool very well. So if you're not sure where to start, just go build something with it. Whether it's React Query or some other open source library, just pick any project, any kind of fun, mundane thing, or those weird things that it's not going to make you any money, but it really looks good on a portfolio, right? Like, go start one of those projects and use whatever it is you want to learn about, and that's going to open up. It's going to open up more opportunities in your experience to contribute back to the library.
Mm-hmm. And you've been a maintainer for at least a year now, obviously, with React Query. What are some of your top tips that you've learned from maintaining this project that you would give to other maintainers? Top tips around possibly the Discord or discussions, or just whatever kind of top tips you've got for maintainers maintaining their projects.
Most of them we've kind of already touched on. The best one would be setting up those issue templates, getting your issue templates done, getting discussions turned on, having a community like Discord, requiring your users and setting up the expectation to use Code Sandbox to replicate issues and making that easy for people to do. It's all about cutting that feedback loop down to the smallest amount of time possible for someone to tell you, this is wrong, it needs to be better, and you can make it better. And the faster that you can go through that cycle, the faster your open source library is going to be able to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. Just reducing that time, because obviously if people are there wanting to contribute, they want to know that that as a maintainer, that you're the one, that you're hearing them, and that you're actually either saying yes, this is a good contribution, or no, it's not, or hey, can we tweak this, or can we tweak that? So I think definitely reducing that feedback time is really, really helpful. Now, do you have any top tips or any like slightly different tips for maintainers that are starting a project for the first time? So obviously you started React Query, and have you noticed any differences between like starting and building a project from scratch versus maintaining a project, or being what they call maintainers of a project?
Yeah, if you are going to start a new project, in the beginning, it's very easy to, you have to have full ownership of that code in the very beginning. It's all you, and you can't really expect anybody else to help you or step in. And that can go on for quite a while. It could be months or years that happens. Even if your project gets very, very popular, you might be the only person that can actually do anything about problems or make it better. And you think that might be the hardest part, but it's actually not. In my opinion, the hardest part comes when the community starts to grow and you do get contributors and people who want to help. I have experienced, not just with React Query, but with React Table, some of the biggest challenges is just letting go and sharing that responsibility, allowing other people to, you need to be able to delegate and allow other people to help you, and trust that people are going to implement things well. And you need to learn kind of how to manage. I hate to say that word, but when you become a maintainer of a large library with lots of contributors, you need to learn management skills, and you need to learn how to be kind, but also how to enforce expectations. You need to know how to communicate between many people and facilitate discussions between people who disagree with each other. Those are the hard long-term challenges that kind of take people by surprise. At least they took me by surprise after these libraries got a lot of traction. So nailing that down early on. And really, I think the best advice I could give is just be kind and remember that it's just code. And no code is sacred code. You know, we're all in this to make the world a better place. And as long as you're making the software the best it can be to help other people, that's really what matters the most. So get rid of your ego before you walk in.
I really love that. No code is sacred. We're all in this to make the world a better place. I really, really love and super appreciate that sentiment as well, because that is literally what open source is all about, right? And I think what you've really highlighted there is something that startups experience a lot too, which is when you're growing from, it's much easier to grow from 1 to 10 people in a startup or 1 to 20 people than it is to grow from 20 to 40 or 20 to 50. Because once you grow to that size, you start experiencing all the things that you've mentioned. The community wants to get involved. How do you, sort out disputes? How do you, sort out clashes in culture and personalities? And how do you, as you said, how do you start letting go of things so that your community can then take it? Because, I'm assuming for most people that start an open source project, they don't want to be working on it just by themselves, forever and a day, right? The whole idea is to build a community around it and have other core maintainers that you can all then, push the project. So then the project is no longer dependent on you, right?
Absolutely.
And I think
that is the goal.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of leads us into the next little thing that I think that you want to talk about, at least. And that's that you have a startup as well, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your startup?
Sure. I sent you a link there. Yep.
Yep. Got
It's called Nozzle, and I think that name is awesome, by the way. But Nozzle
like a hose nozzle? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. It's funny because this has nothing to do with what we are today. But in the very beginning, there were talks of making kind of like a social media aggregation and funneling software. And so it kind of gave us the idea of oh, it's a nozzle, and you're kind of you're focusing and spraying out, all of the your tweets or your posts or whatever. It has nothing to do with social media, but the name was so good that we just kind of couldn't let go. So what Nozzle is today is it is a rank tracking software. And what is rank tracking? That's a great question. Rank tracking is basically reverse engineering Google search results.
And this looks really cool.
we reverse engineer Google search results at scale. So for very large Fortune 500 sized companies who have data analysts and people who are just really data hungry and data junkies, they need all of this data at scale so they can make informed decisions for their marketing team and SEO. And we are one of the very few companies that can actually supply that data at the scale that these companies need. So we are just reverse crawling Google search results all day, and
it's insane.
Categorizing and tagging, and we're storing all of this into structured database in these massive big data databases. And we provide that data back to people. Yeah, we provide that back to people either through an API or obviously the front end, which is where I come in. So from day one, I have been all front end, so all UI and UX for Nozzle. And I have one employee who is helping me now, but together we have built all of the application and marketing and front end, everything for Nozzle. So it's been a lot of fun.
This is cool. You've been going since July 2012.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Nice website, by the way. This is what I like about coders and stuff who get into startups and things. It's you just have really nice websites. Everything just looks amazing. So nice work. And now I've got a question from the chat as well, which is back onto GitHub as well. So if you want, go check out Tanner's really, really cool startup. And also I'll put the link in the chat there as well. But got a question from the chat, and then we're going to finish up on couple last questions from me, which is once you create a GitHub project, how does it become open source, and how do you get it to visible to something like what NPM is basically up to? Now,
Well,
you kind of touched on it a little bit.
Once you create a GitHub repo, I would say it's open source because
basically
the code is open. It's there. People can look at it. So, I guess that's what means open source.
Yeah, so essential so basically there's two types of GitHub, right? There's GitHub private and there's GitHub public. So any public thing, and actually I'm going to ask you this, Tanner, as well. Any public repo is publicly available. Technically speaking, that doesn't necessarily mean it's open source though. So if you want something to be open source, you need to have an open source license that states that your code is open source, that allows other people to use it and says that you're giving everyone else a license to go and use that. There's lots of really cool ones, but while I go Google ours, I wanted to hear from Tanner what you use for your open source license and which one you chose for your open source license for React Query.
I'm pretty sure we use the MIT license.
Yep.
It's extremely permissive and very flexible. So I'm pretty sure I try and use the MIT license for everything that I do.
So we've got the MIT one here. So you can grab this one. We also have the other one that I just posted in the chat for those people who are keen to have a look. Is this one could literally choose a license. So the MIT one is on there. But it basically goes through like what you're and this is actually a very interesting point because lots of people have no idea about open source licensing. So yeah, basically you need to choose a license that gives everyone else ownership or like use of going out and using that code. Because if you just put up a public repo and there's no license on it, theoretically people can't go and then open source to everyone else because as the writer you haven't given everyone the license to go and actually use that. So that is one big thing is there you go, Glenn say thanks for making it MIT. They thought you would have used the Apache 2 one, but they're happy. Glenn is very, very happy you're using the MIT one. But yeah, basically make sure you've got a license on yours. So if we go and have a quick look again back at the repo for React Query, you'll see there is an actual license on there. Under where's yours? There, license. So here is your open source license. So everyone needs to make sure you've got one. There you go. Yours is the MIT one. Licensed under MIT. So it says here that basically Tanner and the team are providing this so you can use it for commercial use, modification, distribution, and private use. There is no liability and warranty on it. And obviously everything is written down here. So it's really, really easy. And just make sure you have it. Just make sure that your code is able to be like out there and used for open source. Is there anything else you want to say on that, Tanner?
No. Well, I have been looking into something called dual licensing lately.
Ooh.
So not for React Query, but for some other projects I'm working on that are more of like an enterprise product. So there would definitely be more businesses that would be interested in using it than just kind of hobbyists or open source projects. And that would be an interesting discussion we'd probably have to have later. But there is something called dual licensing where you can open source license for people who are using it for non-commercial things. And then you can have a separate license available for the same code that lets people use it for private use or commercial use. But you have to set up some type of a payment for that license. Mm-hmm. There's lots of people working on how to make that better too. And I wish I knew more about it, which is why I'm kind of learning about it right now. But it sounds really exciting to me because I know there are a lot of businesses that use my open source software. And when I see those business names, I kind of am like, wow, I'm so excited that they're using my software. And then I'm like, Wow, I wish they could, donate like $1,000 to the project or something.
And I think that's one of the key reasons why we bought in GitHub sponsors too, right? So I noticed that
Yeah.
React Query is part of GitHub sponsors. So how have you found that experience?
GitHub sponsors has been great. And it's been great because I think it's enabled more businesses to contribute back to open source. And I think that's been the biggest problem. And GitHub sponsors is not technically perfect. I have calls with GitHub uh, R&D and people who want feedback on sponsors all the time. And one thing I'm always telling them is that I hope very soon or in the near future that uh, GitHub sponsors, in my opinion, should be better built to help sponsorships from companies and businesses.
Mhm.
Up to now, a lot of sponsorships that are happening today, in fact, I'd say a majority of them are probably happening between developers. We're really just kind of moving money around between ourselves, right? So it's like open source money just kind of circulating.
Yep.
And what's going to solve kind of all that burnout and all of that open source sustainability stuff that kind of gets talked about here and there is having more money come in from businesses that are using open source software and being very successful. So
Mm. Definitely. We know there are a lot of businesses that are using the sponsorship program. But yeah, you're right. It'd be cool to see a few more. And I know Glenn's just put in the chat too, license back onto the licensing. Is that licensing's boring but required. And we could literally spend hours sitting here
yeah, we
talking
could.
about licensing, copyright, IP. But yeah, we won't. We've only got about a few minutes left. So Tanner, to end us off, I would like you to it's a really brief, I don't know how long the story is, but just give us a brief insight in how you got involved, firstly in coding and then secondly in open source.
Well, in high school, I wrote my first HTML, and it wasn't CSS files back then, but my first styles, right? And that came very naturally to me, and I never really considered it to be like a career path, though. Um, it was a lot of fun. JavaScript wasn't super powerful then, so it kind of wasn't as big a deal as it is today, but it was definitely there. And but at the time, I wanted to get into film and audio engineering. I went to school for film and audio engineering for a while, actually, um, until I ran out of money, couldn't keep going to school. And instead of going into debt, I decided I was going to try and work my way through school. And that's when I decided that building websites was actually a very lucrative way to make money, and
Oh yeah.
I was pretty good at it. So I started building websites, and eventually, worked my way into the WordPress scene, building WordPress sites, very low code uh, coding, I guess you could call it, with WordPress. I started building some custom PHP plugins for WordPress, and then I really kind of took off when I discovered Angular. Um, I can't remember what year this was, but it was like 2012, I believe.
Ali did the
Angular
startup.
Angular really got me excited about JavaScript, and so I started learning about JavaScript and Angular kind of at the same time. And that's when I started, actually was an employee for my startup before I was a co-founder. I was the very first
Oh.
employee of my own startup, doing all of the front end work. And then eventually I became a co-founder, and then it was time to migrate to React because Angular 1X was just getting old and Angular 2 was dragging its feet for a couple of years. So yeah, that's kind of the quick story of how I got into coding in general and React. Um, from there, my open source work really took off when I contributed to Chart.js. I
Ooh,
needed a charting
nice.
library. I really liked Chart.js, but it could be much better. So I came in with a friend from Canada, and together we wrote version 2 of Chart.js and released
Nice.
that. And it was a lot of fun. I don't ever want to work with the Canvas API again, but it was a lot of fun.
It's like the one time I did it was good. Let's just leave that one time as one time.
Yeah. And really Chart.js is where kind of things really took off after that. Chart.js was fun. I wanted to start something new. So I got into, I started building some things around cross filter from Square, which is now deprecated, I believe. And then about a year later, I built React Table. And that was the very first library I had that really took off. After React Table, I built React Static, which is a static site generator. And then Gatsby and Next.js came along with a lot of like money and investors and, you know, tons of people behind it. And it was just kind of like me versus the world. And I decided not to keep working on React Static, but shortly after that, I started working on what would become React Query.
That is very, very cool. I like how like everything's just kind of like flown from one to the next. And if you say like, I just started building websites and now I'm like an open source maintainer, it kind of like doesn't really compute. But when you talk about each step, you know, you're like, yeah, I can really see how each one, you know, flowed onto the next and how you're just kind of like at the right point in time for those things. I think that's what a lot of people don't like realize, that you've got to do those things at the very start. You've got to just start, you know, building random websites and random WordPress plugins and finding an open source project that is really cool that you want to use, that you then go, hey, it could be better, let's fix it and build this cool thing for it. And I think that's how a lot of people get into open source. Now, to end us off, because we're nearly there at the end, but I will take any last minute questions from the chat as well. But my final question to you is, your journey is amazing and you've come here and built so many really cool things, and you know, got a startup, you work in React Query, and you got this really, really cool portfolio underneath you. What are your top tips for people who are sitting there going, I want to be like that, I want to learn how to code like that, I want to get involved in open source like that? What are your top tips for people who like maybe haven't got any kind of experience in that kind of sector, or what are your tips and advice to those kind of people?
I would say put yourself in a challenging situation. You know, I told my story, and the most important part of my story, honestly, was that I became a part of a startup that was trying to solve very difficult problems with very few people. And when you're put under that kind of pressure and trying to solve hard problems with limited resources, that's when open source becomes a gold mine. You know, you can build so much with open source software these days, and, you know, but you're not going to unless you have to. So I don't know, for me personally, I think the best motivation for learning open source is starting a business and trying to build something from nothing. And open source tools are going to be essential.
Mm-hmm. I definitely resonate with that. I'm a startup founder myself, and definitely building something from nothing is a challenge that you takes a certain kind of person. But if you're sitting there and you want to do it, I think that's a resonating factor we've had from nearly all of our guests throughout the weeks, is you just got to get out there and do it. But I really like that specific nature that you've called out. Not just get out there and do it, or not just give it a go, but actually give yourself a challenge. Put yourself in a challenging situation and see what you can make of it. We've had Ted in the chat said, very nicely said. So thank you for that. Tanner, I want to thank you for your time today on the Open Source Friday chat. Is there any last minute words or thoughts, shout outs that you'd like to give out to the community and anyone else who's going to watch the recording afterwards?
No, not really. Just go check out React Query. If you want to, if you want to make me happy, go check out React Query. You can buy my course. I have an essentials course for React Query right there on the homepage of it. You can follow me on Twitter. You could become a GitHub sponsor. If you are a business that uses my software, please become a sponsor. I even have awesome perks for people who become sponsors.
Oh, there's perks? What are the perks?
You get to advertise on my repo, and I'll give you special attention for if you need help, and lots of fun things. I also have
special attention. Everyone wants special attention, right?
Yep. And, there's probably not too many people watching that this applies to, but if you are like a big business and you have an SEO team or a dedicated marketing team, then come talk to me about Nozzle, because we've got some great stuff that we could help you out with.
I'm not even following you yet, so there you go. I'll give you a follow on the stream. Everyone can now see that I'm following you. So again, thank you so much for your time on the Open Source Friday stream today. We absolutely loved having you here and chatting to you. I loved some of the things that you spoke about, which is, give yourself a challenge. If there's a project that you're already contributing to, or a project you're already using, go contribute to it. Learn something about it. If you're starting your project yourself, just get out there and just promote it as much as you can. Talk about it. Start building it, and when it gets to the point where you are building a community, you just gotta let go of your ego, let go of your sacred code, because there's no such thing as sacred code. It's all open source. Let go of that and just send it out to the community, and just watch it go. Just send off your little baby out into the wild. As Tanner said again, start up a Discord server. It's a really, really good place to collaborate with your community. Enable discussions on your repos, set up your issues really well, and don't forget, if you are starting or you're maintaining or you're wanting to run an open source project, don't forget to choose a license for it, because otherwise people can't technically use it. So again, I want to thank you for being on here, Tanner. It was really, really great to have you. Thank you for staying up late. I know it's 10 p.m. your time now, so we will say thank you and hope you have a good night.
Okay, you too.
All right, stick around on the Zoom. We'll have a quick chat afterwards. And to everyone else, again, thanks so much again for being here. It has been absolutely awesome to have you all on the stream. Don't forget to, if you haven't already, give us a follow on the GitHub Twitch channel. And don't forget to go on to our virtual meetups page and actually sign up and be part of our virtual meetup group, because we put in all our meetups that are happening for Open Source Friday. So the next one will be happening this time next week, I believe. I can't even remember who we've got on. We've got cool people coming on the stream. Don't forget, there's also the one happening on the American time zone for all those Americans in the channel, in the chat. The next one on our American time zone is, let me have a quick look for you. We have B Dougie will be chatting to one of our people from the GitHub command line, I believe. It looks like we've got on... Oh, no, we've got Create React App, one of the maintainers of Create React App, and we've got my colleague B Dougie is talking to them Friday morning American time. So if you're on the American time zone, go check that out. And also, as we mentioned before, we've got meetups happening on lots of different time zones. We've got Africa, Russia, India, a few others happening as well, where we showcase you some of the really cool things that are coming out of GitHub, but more importantly, we showcase really cool developers from the community. We've got developers in each of those places coming in and giving their story. And finally, for all those gamers out there in the channel, we have our GitHub Game Off is about to start. So on the 1st of November, the GitHub Game Off 2020 will commence. So if you would like to be part of that this year, we've got over 1,200 people who have already signed up for that. The theme this year is going to be very, very cool. I know what it is, but it's not announced yet. But go join the game jam and yeah, sign up to that. It's going to be really fun. There's no winners. We like to showcase all the cool things of the community. Basically, if you submit a game, the community judges you, and if you submit, you get to judge everyone else as well. So only people who have submitted games to the Game Off can judge each other's prizes, judge each other's games, and then we will potentially showcase you. Again, thanks everyone so much for being here Friday, for Open Source Friday. Have a lovely Friday afternoon for all the Australians and New Zealanders. I'm pretty sure it's super, super late on a Thursday night for all those people in the Northern Hemisphere, and a happy good morning to all those people on the Indian time zone. Thanks for being here. We'll see you all next time. Have a lovely afternoon, evening, and day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.